Book 3, Dated Diary Excerpts. June 16, 1961. We boarded a huge jet number 710 for Chicago. It was a thrill to fly over the Great Rocky Mountain Range, to look down at the huge peaks. Landing at Denver, where we were down for 20 minutes, Marilyn and myself deplaned, walked through the air terminal, then boarded again. As we rose high into the air after leaving the city, on looking down, the earth resembled a kitchen floor covered with checkerboard tile. At an even higher altitude, it seemed as though we were floating through an unpopulated sphere. Below was an ocean of white clouds, with the earth entirely obliterated so far down. If one didn't know the earth was there, they would think the clouds were a soft carpet to walk on. At times, it felt as if we may easily rub against the top of the sky, with the carpet of clouds far, far below. The captain has just announced that we are over the Missouri River, nearing Nebraska. Now the clouds are separating and seem to be fluffs of cotton floating just above the housetops. Now MD tells me we are nearing Des Moines, Iowa. It's wonderful riding through the sky with utter ease. Again, I have the feeling we may scrape the edge of the sky. Now the earth looks like a lovely patchwork quilt top like Mother used to make, with many colors and pieces put together. I've always looked up at the sky and said to myself, I'd like to ride on a cloud. Now I am looking down from far above them. They seem much smaller from here. As a child, I wished I were a bird. This is just about as good. Captain Bruce just announced that we are cruising at 25,000 feet, so we'll be over Detroit, Michigan, weather 60 degrees. We'll arrive in New York, 7 o'clock. New York at sunset. Huge jets waiting to take off. A forest of skyscrapers outlined against a pink skyline. Our Pan-American jet clipper waiting, crowds of milling humanity. New York, and 9 p.m., warm and clear. Now taking off for Frankfurt, Germany on jet clipper Fleetwing 72. Wish it were daylight so we could see. 126 passengers, 10 crewmen. Nighttime far above the earth, too excited to sleep, though everyone else seems to be in the depths of slumber. My thoughts race. Can it be real? Is it I with MD and Marilyn floating far above the clouds near the roof of the sky, with a world of humanity far below? What are the folks at home doing now? So close to the stars I could almost reach out and pick one now. What is a continental breakfast? What will it be like in Germany? Will the people like us? Daylight looking out the window of the Clipper Fleetwing. I love that name. I can see nothing but a solid floor of white clouds far below us. Off to the front and side, I see a scene resembling the frozen Arctic. The sun is rising now, casting a rosy glow over the far horizons. Suddenly, the floor of clouds part, and we look down. The captain announces we are over London as we are eating our continental breakfast, a roll and a drink. London looks like a crazy patchwork quilt far beneath us. June 17th. Weather nice. The captain has just announced that we will be in Frankfurt in a few minutes. We are excited and thrill with anticipation. I look down, just as the clouds part, and see a beautiful city below with neat houses, row on row, each with a garden and fruit trees. It looks as if trees and shrubs are everywhere, a bright, glossy green, every inch of ground covered with something beautiful. Soon we are on the ground bumping along. Finally, we come to a noisy stop. I must say here that when our jet took off in Salt Lake City, it let out a sort of wild feminine shriek or scream. It was very interesting to experience. An exciting trip. Only yesterday, it seems we left our home in quiet and lovely Bozeman, Montana, and now we are alighting from this fabulous bird which has just landed. I have to pinch myself to see if it is really me. On deplaning, we find nothing but crowds of humanity hurrying everywhere. How strange everything seems in this strange and huge city of Frankfurt, with MD and Marilyn, who is dressed in a white knit dress, looking lovely as a princess. We hurriedly board a trolley car, which takes us across the landing field to gates where crowds of people are waiting. As we show our passports to an officer at a desk, we see him signal to a pleasant-looking man standing nearby. The smiling man turns out to be Franz Wallner, an Austrian, who has come to meet us and escort us to our place of living. He is friendly, has a good command of the English language, and speaks with an accent. I think we love him at first sight. We find it is necessary for us to stay at a hotel because of the scarcity of housing. Franz takes us to his apartment, where we meet his wife, a lovely but rather shy lady, then to the Arcadia Hotel a block away. On arriving, we make ourselves comfortable. Franz leaves and MD goes to find us some food. It has already been arranged for us to breakfast downstairs in the hotel where only breakfast is served. 3 p.m. Marilyn and I decide to go for a walk. As we emerge into the street, we see groups of young men in excited conversation, their faces tense and restless. The sidewalks are narrow and crowded. We choose to walk on a street with few buildings, which is free of these fiery youths who stare at us. As we walk, we are suddenly aware of a large car, which seems to be following us. It drives up even with us and stops. I see 2 or 3 young men staring at us. I grab Marilyn's arm and hurry on, horrified as I see that the car and its occupants and ourselves are the only ones on this street. This continues, the car stopping then following us until we reach the end of the street and heavy traffic. That street seemed the longest street we had ever walked. We return to our rooms a little shaken and decide the streets with many people are the safest. MD returns to our room with some Wiener schnitzels. As hungry as we are, I couldn't eat mine, it was too greasy. He also brought us a box of chocolates, which looks delicious. But as we bite into them, we find each chocolate is filled with liquor. We go to bed very hungry. So goes our first day and night in the large city of Frankfurt. As we snuggle in our beds, we wonder what the morrow will bring. Something exciting, we are sure. We find that all of the building people are on holiday but France. So we are very much on our own, waiting for a special assignment, much different than the proselytizing missionaries, for the time being at least. June 18th. Weather nice. We go to Sunday school with the Wallners where we meet some nice people. Most of them are servicemen from the States. They look at us longingly, eager to talk, for they are homesick. Afterward, to a restaurant where we order dinner that is so greasy we can hardly eat it. We find we cannot get fresh fruit, only juice of some sort, which is warm. Everyone seems to be eating Wiener schnitzels and beer. We have been here a week, and as yet, haven't been able to find anything very edible except chicken or club sandwiches at a little outdoor place which is picturesque under the trees. A group of gypsies play violin music as we eat. As far as a good meal, we haven't had one since we arrived here. The 3 of us have lost a little weight, but we enjoy the many sights and customs of the people, which are new to us. The Gigis from Salt Iki invite us to their apartment for ice cream. Somewhere they have found real American ice cream. How wonderful it tasted. Frankfurt is a huge and beautiful city with little eating places on every block, shaded with giant umbrellas and walled in with many bright-colored flower boxes with blooming flowers. It is populated with a mixed nationality of swarming, hurrying humanity. Its youth have fiery depths in their eyes. The young men stand in groups on the narrow sidewalks and stare at Marilyn as we crowd by them. The girls dress very chic, yet quite immodest with their skirts so tight and short they can hardly step. They wear loose, revealing sweaters and their hair back-combed or snarled and pushed extremely high in a large poof or beehive. All the women dress well. The clothes in the store windows are fabulous to look at. Marilyn and I can hardly keep our eyes off them. Throughout the city, there are bombed ruins still standing. I look at them and it's easy to visualize the suffering and tragedy of the last war. I see a better picture, more real of that tragic time. When I asked an Austrian woman if she had witnessed the bombing, she said, "Oh, yes." As I look into her eyes, I see deep in their depths a suffering she wanted to forget. So we quickly changed the conversation to another subject. Thursday, we go on a trip with Franz to Heidelberg and Heilbronn, a distance of about 100 miles one way, where he looks at prospective building sites for the church. As we pass through Heidelberg, it seems as though we have suddenly entered into a fairy storybook world, with huge castles far up on the steep mountainsides, with terraced vineyards at their feet. And far below is the river Nesch, where every kind of boat is going up or down the river, and on whose sunny banks loll groups of people sunning themselves under gaudy-colored umbrellas. A more picturesque sight I have never before seen. As we ride along, we see pleasant villages where the hay is being taken in from the fields. The women folks are helping at this task. We notice that all of them wear peasant dresses and kerchiefs on their heads. What a comparison with a picture of the American housewife doing her breakfast dishes garbed in a pair of pants or shorts. At supper time, her husband will probably come home, put on an apron, and help her with her heavy housework. But let us go back again to the lovely, peaceful, and green, carpeted German villages. As we drive along, we see the long, low dwellings of the people where the stock and hay are in one end and the living quarters in the other. It is surprising how very neat and clean the dwellings are. As we look at the hillsides, for this is beautiful rolling country, we watch the women and men, or I should say, the families throwing or lifting the hay onto the small wagons or carts which are drawn by oxen or cows. There are many apple trees in this area. Suddenly, we come into a small village where the buildings on either side of the extremely narrow streets look as if they were cut out of pasteboard and placed there to make a beautiful picture. I hold my breath as we race through these little places. In Europe, they don't drive leisurely. They race here and there like mad. Our driver, Franz, is a marvelous one at the wheel, so we race at a tremendous speed along the village streets, seldom passing another car. Sometimes, we wonder if we will scrape the side of a building or perhaps run over a pedestrian, but as I said, our driver is an expert one. We are excited with the thrill at seeing something new at any moment. We finally reach Heilbronn, which is a lovely city of trees, gardens, and people everywhere. We look at building sites which the church is interested in buying. On coming to the first one, we stop outside by a high rock wall where it is necessary to ring a bell. Then, we enter a gate and climb some rock steps, then into a huge mansion almost hidden by trees. Life-size statues are at the front entrance. The furnishings are lavish with huge beds, costly rugs. We are told that this place can be purchased for $110,000, which seems very reasonable. Some very proud people live here. We are aware of this as we meet them. The second place we look at has already been purchased by the church at a price of $500,000. It also is a lovely old house with life-size statues, steps leading up the front entrance, and a garden in the back. Beneath the balcony, we see a cherry tree whose fruit is turning red. We are shown through the many different rooms, ladies' powder rooms, library, etc. There are two different stairways, the smaller one at the back for the servants, and the wider, more elaborate one for the family and their guests. I try to visualize the people who lived in this place and the happenings which colored their lives. Certainly, they were proud people and must have loved this place dearly. On the second-story floor, workmen are tearing out a wall to make a temporary room large enough that the saints in this area might have a place to hold their meetings, to gather together in worship, and to further the work of the Lord. As we drive home in the evening, the small villages seem more lovely than ever. Serenity and peace are here. How different these quiet postcard scenes, the peasants in their native dress, compared to the huge city of Frankfurt with its screaming, roaring traffic, its human odors, crowds of bustling people, and its amorous, impulsive youth conversing in tense groups on the city's narrow sidewalks. As we drive through the twilight and green-carpeted countryside, we occasionally see a boy or girl or a woman drawing by hand a small cart of hay by the side of the road. As I look at these humble people, an admiration for them stirs within me, and I think of the scripture or verse, "By the sweat of thy brow thou shalt earn thy bread." As we near the beautiful Heidelberg again, we look to the west, and there above a green hill hangs a huge blood-red ball of fire, the sun just ready to say good night. I have never seen the sun so red in the States, and the beauty and potency of its color leaves me speechless as I gaze upon it. We arrive home at 10 p.m., and as I go to bed, I think of the beauty I have seen this day, almost too much to digest in so short a time. Saturday, a week after our arrival here, we moved to a larger and more suitable hotel nearer the shopping district and the church offices. Thursday evening last, the Crandalls, who are here from Salt Lake, called on us and invited us to go to the opera Friday evening with themselves and Geigies, who are also from Salt Lake. It was rather an exciting evening as it was Marilyn's first opera. The opera was La Bohème. We had a wonderful time. We went to a new opera house, which seated 1,400 people with balconies curving around the walls almost to the ceiling. We have already seen the old opera house where it stands in a different part of the city in ruins, its insides gutted by bombs of World War II. It stands like a weary skeleton, a gray ghost haunted by the tragedy of the past. I feel sad as I look at its lampposts, torn but standing. Its wide front entrance is still intact. I visualize the building in the days of its gaiety and splendor, with grand dames and handsome escorts walking regally over its threshold. As we travel through the city, we see beautiful old cathedrals and church spires rising into the sky. Many life-size statues give the atmosphere color and prestige. Green parks where crowds of people fill the park benches. Monday. We like our new hotel much better than the Arcadia, except the noise of the screaming traffic below our window is almost unbearable. Marilyn has an upset stomach and lay in bed most of the day. We eat our breakfast in a dining room with the other hotel guests. The maid insists that she bring Marilyn some spearmint tea, which is the exact kind that we make at home in Bozeman. Tuesday. Marilyn and I go shopping in a huge department store. We buy a green umbrella, which turns out to be our best friend, Marilyn P75, in the months to come, for we hardly go anywhere without it. If it could talk, it could tell many funny and interesting stories. It got lost once in England in Lewis's large department store. I was on the bus going home when I missed it. Quickly getting off the bus and catching another back, I hurriedly went into Lewis's. I found it exactly where I had left it. It had fallen into a crevice between the till and the wall, but was in plain sight of everyone. I hugged it to me as I picked it up. It is among my keepsakes. Getting back to our Tuesday shopping trip. We wander through the store, admiring its bright and colorful array of merchandise. By this time, we have a scant knowledge of German money. We see some attractive gay-colored straw hats with high crowns. Marilyn tries a blue one and likes it so well, decides to wear it. After paying for it, we do some more looking. Of a sudden, a fat, short, expressive-eyed little man hurries up and says to Marilyn in English, "Where did you find your pretty hat?" We were so surprised and dumbfounded at hearing a stranger speak to us in English. We just stared at him speechless. As we were regaining our senses too late, he threw his hands in the air and exclaimed, "Oh, I forgot, you don't speak English," and hurried away. June 16th, weather sultry. We were told tonight that we might be sent to England within a week. MD and I go to a wonderful Chinese eating place where we have fried rice, chicken salad, etc. It was good. Marilyn stays in the hotel and writes letters. June 28th, weather cool. Today, we arose at 7:30 a.m., had breakfast, and the three of us walked to the church offices and meet Brother Biesinger for the first time, one of the heads of the church building here. We also visit with Brother Crandall, who reminded us to be to church Sunday so they could take pictures of the three blonde bombshells, Gail Crandall, Marilyn, and Norda Eilers, who seems to have made quite a hit among the people here. He also wants the Neuffer's picture for the church building publication paper. June 29th, weather fine. We are excited, for we are going to Hoheneufen, where MD's father was born and lived until he was 19 years of age. We leave Frankfurt at 11:18 a.m. on board a train for Stuttgart. It is pleasant riding through the beautiful countryside. How thrifty these people are, for every foot of land is under cultivation. Fruit orchards, vineyards, green meadows, and fields of hay. The trains here have a high feminine whistle, whose sound thrills and reminds us of the strangeness of everything. We find we can catch another train, however, that will take us to Hoheneufen. We will have to change at Nürtingen, and this proves to be quite an experience. Showing our tickets after leaving the train at Nürtingen, we find that no one speaks English. The station master can't tell how long we will have to wait. We don't know it, but many trains will come before ours. We soon find that trains come through about every 15 minutes. We are waiting for the next one, we think, much to the station master's dismay, for I am sure he reads our minds. Each time one pulls in, he vigorously shakes his head, meaning no, no. Finally, we sit down, whereupon he looks much happier. At this point, we feel much like deaf and dumb mutes. Worse, for we don't even know sign language. It is laughable, for before many trains come by, it seems that everyone in the waiting room is trying to help. After an hour or so, we hear another screeching whistle. Then the station master comes over to us, looking much relieved. with a man who motions us to follow him. After which, we board the train and are swished away, all trying to say something the man can understand, all to no avail. The only word we have in common is American and yaw yaw. Finally, the train stops about a mile down the hill from Hoheneuffen. As we follow the man up the well-worn path, we notice every inch of earth is utilized. We see grandfather's apple orchards. So near like his in America, they could be the same orchards. We try to thank the man for his kindness and turn our attention to the tiny village of Hoheneuffen. We are here at last in this village of strange and foreign people. We find a hotel with snow-white bedding and fluffy comforters, or quilts filled with down. In the evening, Marilyn and I stroll along the village street. MD is looking up relatives. As we look down the narrow, winding main street, it looks like a fairy storybook village. There is a high board fence, which conceals chickens, for we hear and smell them. Adjoining this is a small store, another board fence, then another store. In front of each board fence is a manure pile. Suddenly, a wagon load of hay pulled by a tractor hurries by. We just have time enough to dodge in a doorway to avoid being brushed by the hay. Stepping out again, we see a large man leading a cow. As the cow sees us, she breaks into a run. The man at her side looks as if he is enjoying himself as he runs beside, holding onto the rope, which secures her. We think we may get run over, but they pass down the street. As we look up at the neat 3-story houses opposite the little stores, we see each window has a window box of gay blooming flowers. The women and children lean out the open windows and wave at us. It seems that these people are in a world by themselves. We see a woman driving her cows through the village street. Suddenly, 3 huge army trucks swing around a curve, and upon seeing us, its occupants, American GIs, yell at us and throw their hats in the air. The front truck stops, and for a moment it looks as if the ones behind may pile up. Regaining their composure, they wave and pass on with the shock of surprise all over their faces at seeing Americans in this strange place, especially a pretty blonde American girl. We see a horse-drawn cart coming down the street, returning home for the evening with the whole family in it. Certainly, here is a peace that can't be found anywhere else. The beauty, serenity, and quaintness of this place is almost indescribable, with orchards and gardens such as I have never seen, except Grandfather Nuffer's in America. We try to visualize John Nuffer, for that is MD's father's name, as a boy in this quiet village. The house he had lived in was torn down. We look at a small stream which had run beside it. He probably fished and swam in its clear depths many times. His parents were poor. He spoke many times of his eating the cherry pits to help fill his hungry stomach. When he was 16, a man of wealth, recognizing his talents and worth, sent him to college at Stuttgart, where he studied architecture. Diary, July 15, 1961. MD's chapel is not ready to start. In the meantime, he is working on the Winthshaw Chapel, which is quite near us. We are living in the great city of Manchester. The chapel he will build will be in Stockport, an adjoining city of Manchester. Marilyn and myself are trying to adjust to the dampness of the climate. It seems we can't get warm, for our rooms are damp. A few days after our arrival, we glimpse 2 young men coming up the walk. Some Mormon missionaries, I say to Marilyn. They introduce themselves as Elder Brown from Salt Lake City and Elder Kent from Brigham City. It is wonderful, so see someone from near home. They take us for a ride, our first since coming here. We see beautiful scenery as we ride in the countryside with its pastoral landscapes, quiet paddocks where sheep and cattle browse. The farmhouses and buildings painted white look as if they had just been scrubbed. The elders lend us sweaters to wear until ours come. Thursday night, we are surprised by a visit of the North British Mission President, Grant B. Thorne, his wife, and 2 daughters. We entertain them in the large lounge sitting room. Monday, Marilyn, myself, and some other missionaries take a trip on a huge bus to the Shakespeare country, Stratford-on-Avon, Warwick, Kenilworth, and Worcester castles. It is our first sight, but by no means our last of the English castles we shall see. We ride through quiet hamlets occasionally, coming upon vast green acreage with beautiful deciduous old trees and occasionally a castle set back from the road, its turrets reaching into the sky. We have our first experience with a lavatory turnstile. We may forget some of the things we have seen up until now, but this, never. We stop at a quiet roadside, alight, and line up to use this strange contraption. After waiting endless moments, your turn comes. You drop a halfpenny in a slot. Insert yourself at a right angle between the thing's two exposed, rigid arms and push heavily on the one confronting you, whereupon it gives you a hard smack in the stomach. If the mechanism is working, the restraining arm reluctantly lets you through. The other arm, unless you are quick enough to outwit it, gives you a heavy slap on your behind as it ejects you forcibly and clicks into immobility, balefully awaiting its next victim. And at last you are through. Wednesday, Marilyn, Linda Thorne, 2 lady missionaries, and myself take a sightseeing trip to Rothesay, Scotland, part of the way by train, after which we board a ship and sail on the North Sea. Rothesay is beautiful, a picture book scene with the mountains rising straight up from the sea, a little village nestling in a tiny cove. The houses are quaint, with flower boxes footing each window where flowers of pink, blue, and yellow run over to the rock walls. Little boats cluster the waters fronting the village. The little shops are interesting. Marilyn buys a knit sweater with many colors woven through a beige background. As we board the ship to leave, the scenery is more beautiful than ever. We want to stand on deck as we sail the North Sea, but the wind is so cutting, we must keep running below deck to keep warm by drinking great mugs of Harlicks, a hot drink made with milk. Didsbury Friday President Thorne invites us to the mission home to a meeting of the proselytizing missionaries. We have a spiritual evening with all of us bearing our testimonies. President Thorne is a dynamic and spiritual man. The English people are courteous, kind, and loving, treating us with great respect. We attend our first conference of the Building Missionaries at London. It is very spiritual, with Brother and Sister Mendenhall attending. He is head of the entire building program of the church. There are only a few of us, which makes our getting together very special. The building program is just getting started. We are among the first few people to come to England. We have our pictures taken on the London Temple steps. Sister Mendenhall, who is a member of the General Relief Society Board, assures me she will give my love to the Butte Stake Relief Society members at General Conference, which she did, I later heard. Sunday, our first Sunday school in Stockport, where Stake President Bates asks that we attend church because they sorely need help, he said. A very depressing day. Finding the place where Sunday school is held, we go down a dark stairway and into a rather large underground room with no windows. It is dimly lighted and reeks with dampness and shabbiness. There are about 8 people who look bewildered and rather lost, but pleased and surprised to see us. As we introduce ourselves, we are shocked at the surroundings, but try not to show our feelings. At this point, I don't think much of President Bates's suggestion that we attend church here. A woman, a new convert to the church, we find out later, is superintendent of the Sunday school and has no idea how to conduct a meeting. Although we find a warm friendliness in these people, we go home depressed and terribly homesick. But when one is doing the Lord's work, there is not time to think of self. The next Sunday we go back, and if ever we were grateful to be born and raised in the church and understand its workings, it is now. We become busy, and the few people take us to their hearts and love us as we do them. Stockport itself is older than Manchester, a quaint old city with tiny shops on each side of cobbled streets that run up and down and every which way. A city of industry, smokestacks, soot, smoke, and poor little shops of every nature. We walk along the main shopping streets, which teem with people. The fish markets can be smelled for great distances. We try to avoid them by walking on the opposite side of the street. If one wants a hat to match a coat or dress, it is only a matter of a few hours when it can be made. Mercy Square is the stopping and starting place for the huge 2-story red buses, which Marilyn and myself became quite adept at riding. They have no doors. In the cold, windy, and rainy weather, I will not say sunny, for we seldom see the sun. We can go most anywhere in Manchester, Stockport, and to the many surrounding cities, villages, and hamlets. At times, riding on the buses, we think we may catch our death of cold. The colorful little shopkeepers hang their wares in the open on the narrow sidewalks. There are colorful arrays of cheese of every kind, eggs, chickens with their feathers and heads still on, as well as their insides intact, hanging directly above a huge table of uncovered Danish butter, crusty, delicious loaves of bread unwrapped, unprotected from smoky air, people's breath, and children's dirty hands. There are plates with bouquets of blood pudding. They take a critter's guts and stuff them with partly dried blood. They resemble wieners, which they make into shapes like daisies, flowers, and display them on fancy plates in the window. There are kidneys for kidney pie, tripe, pickled hog's feet, and head cheese. Often pigs' heads are displayed, and if one wants to, they can buy one and make their own head cheese. There are huge bunches of unskinned rabbits hanging lifeless and horrible looking. Through the city runs a great rock wall where the Roman armies held out in the early times. Marilyn and Linda Thorne enroll in a modeling school for 5 weeks. At the end of that time, Marilyn receives a certificate of graduation and starts modeling for some of the modeling agencies. She does very well. There is a special fashion show for the public when buyers come from all parts of the country, such as Scotland, Ireland, and even London. Each model is introduced as she comes out upon the stage. I am quite thrilled and proud as Marilyn comes out in a gorgeous gown and is introduced as Marilyn from America. She is offered a chance to go to London to model. Marilyn is accepting her new environment marvelously. We are proud of the characteristics she is developing and how well she conducts herself in a large city like Manchester. She also finds time to attend an art school. She takes the bus each day to Manchester. When Myron and I speak at meetings, she very often does also. Our first Christmas Eve away from home was going to be a lonely one, we thought. Just after dark, the elders came, 12 of them with a huge box of candy, etc. We had a gala Christmas Eve, singing carols, visiting and eating goodies around the Christmas tree we had trimmed in the upstairs lounge. We never had time to be homesick for home. Other elders came Christmas morning, and we opened our gifts in front of the fireplace. At last, everything is ready for MD to start on the Stockport Chapel. The day the groundbreaking took place was an eventful one, for there were many people to witness the ceremony. The foundation has been dug, and with part of his inexperienced missionaries except one, MD is eagerly putting in the forms. How happy we and the Stockport members are, for at last we are going to have a chapel to meet in. Our first missionary, Geoffrey Haney from South England, is a good woodwork finisher and will be valuable to MD, as well as a dear friend to us all. The others are very inexperienced. MD will need wisdom, courage, and help from the Lord to build the beautiful building that is planned. He and myself act as parents to the young men who come to work with him. We are responsible for them at all times. I have them in once a week for supper and a home evening. With one, Bill from Scotland, we have rather a hard time understanding each other. The rest of the 5 are from different parts of England. It is a new experience for us to see how each one reacts to his calling and the conditions they are under, to learn their ways and attitudes. The problems that arise with these young men and boys are many and sometimes frustrating. A very few of them have been sent here, I am sure, to reform them, making it very difficult for all. On the other hand, we have some who are choice and a delight to work with. Mormons on mission. On a muddy building site in Bramhall Lane, men are working for virtually nothing and do so because they feel it is a privilege to be sent on a mission by their church to carry out this work. So read an article in the Advertiser, a Stockport newspaper, telling of the building of the Latter-day Saint Chapel in Stockport. Thus the world sees and wonders what force it is that makes us as a people do these things, not seeing yet nor knowing that these young men who work in the mud and slush have a vision of a house of the Lord, its spires reaching heavenward, proclaiming the everlasting gospel of our Savior to all the world. The members are grateful for the publicity they are receiving as they work daily on this beautiful building site, which has virtually become an information center. Pamphlets on Mormonism are available. January 1962. We are told we can move into our own home. It is in Charrington Close, less than a block from a small shopping center, rather a nice neighborhood near Princess Parkway and Yew Tree Lane. Monday, we go to Leeds to buy a new red carpet for the living room. The heating is inadequate, but we are thrilled to be in a house of our own at last. It has a brick wall around the lawn back of the house, some flowers, and a bed of chives, which I love for the scrambled eggs. The bathroom is upstairs with the bedrooms, and we make many trips up the stairs, but I love this place even though it is drafty and cold. We put an electric fireplace in the living room, and the hours we spend in the front of it are hours of pleasantness. Different elders call in each day. Sometimes they need words of encouragement, as I do, for there are days of homesickness for us all. They sort of take the place of my family at home, and I do enjoy having them call me Mom. I have learned not to be idle, for then discouraging thoughts crowd one's mind. It is a blessing to be doing the Lord's work. So many rich experiences are ours. We feel as though we are working hand in hand with the Lord, doing things which we could not do if it were not for His Spirit, which is with us as long as we do His will. When I see what MD is accomplishing with his inexperienced boys, my heart swells with pride and humility. An eventful week. Again, we go with our missionaries to London to conference. At 6 o'clock, we gather in a dining hall for supper. Afterwards, the boys entertain with songs and stories and skits. Never have I seen so much talent. When these nationalities, Scots, Welsh, and English get together, there is no limit to their talent. In the afternoon meeting, President Mendenhall speaks to us. I have never been filled with such inspiration. As we listen to him tell us with deep emotion his saying to President McKay, who had asked him to head the building program of the church, "President McKay, please do not ask me to do this thing, for I have no idea how it can be done." Whereupon President McKay said to him, "I promise you it shall be made known to you this night." Then President Mendenhall told us with tears in his eyes and voice that after he had retired for 8 hours, a vision of the whole building program was opened up to him. At 6 o'clock in the morning, he met President McKay and said to him, "I will do it." President Mendenhall stood before us, a man 6 feet tall, choked with emotion, and pleaded with us, saying, "I pray that you will have faith enough to do the things that will be asked of you." Then he said, "The Lord has so much knowledge for us just as soon as we are prepared enough to receive it." He ended with, "You are so near the forest you can't see the trees." We go home filled with inspiration and a new determination, with the spirit of our work swelling our hearts. Sunday, January 14, 1962. Today is a never-to-be-forgotten day. The weather is better after yesterday's terrific wind. It is stake conference for the Manchester and Leeds Stakes, MD. Left for conference early, as President Bates informed him that Apostle Howard Hunter wished to interview him at the Midland Hotel. Marilyn and myself take a bus into the Palace Theater, where conference is to be held. Everyone, and we are surprised and overjoyed as MD is sustained as Patriarch of Manchester Stake. President and Sister Woodbury, President and Sister Nathan Tanner, Apostle Hunter, and President and Sister Thorne are in attendance. MD is asked to speak. He does very well. It is a spiritual occasion. We are happy to see so many of our friends, the elders, some of whom we haven't seen for some time. Elder Thompson eats lunch with us at a Chinese restaurant. After conference is over, we meet the Woodburys, Tanners, and Elder Hunter at the Midland Hotel, where Elder Hunter ordains MD to the position of Patriarch. Through some misunderstanding, Elder Hunter waits on us a half hour. Busy as he is, I would have thought he would be irritated. Not at all. He is so kind and sweet. It was rather touching when he put his arm around Marilyn, saying, "If you ever need help of any kind, let me know." Right now, Marilyn is trying to make decisions which will influence her life. February 6th, Tuesday. We leave for London with others to attend building conference. We stay at the old Fellbridge Inn. We meet the Geigies from Frankfurt, Germany. How glad we are to see them again. We visit in front of the huge fireplace which burns real logs. Meetings all morning, tours in the theater in the afternoon, an organ recital at Hyde Park Chapel, and a dance at night. Elder Geige and myself dance. He is a marvelous dancer. Sister Geige bought a beautiful knit dress at Harrods. February 8th, 1962. Pictures taken on the stops of the London Temple. In the evening, a banquet. The speakers are President Tanner, President Hanks, and President Cullimore. President Cullimore, who is president of the Irish Mission, tries to prevail on Marilyn to come and serve as a proselytizing missionary under him. A wonderful and spiritual time together. February 9th, we leave for home after bidding all the dear people goodbye. February 13th, 1962. It seems that besides our Sunday meetings at Stockport, where the converts are many, the three of us usually speak each Sunday evening. MD is giving numerous blessings. A couple from South Africa, who are visiting Manchester, came for theirs. I am kept busy taking the blessings from the recorder and typing them. We are busier than we have ever been. MD spends long hours at the chapel site after driving 9 miles each way through the heavy traffic. I am teaching a Sunday school class age 17 to 25, and I love these young people so. We meet in the corner of a hallway, which gives us so little room we almost have to sit on each other, but the class grows larger, and our discussions are wonderful. Many are not members of our church. I think some of them come in off the street. They are very dear to me. They seem to be reaching out for something. One especially, Hilary Harness, a cultured, educated young woman, is not a member. What a help she is to me. 2 girls were so backward they hardly dared to speak the first day they came. They are now giving 2.5-minute talks. I love this glorious opportunity I have to be with these choice young people. The Stockport branch has rented another hall for its members to hold church services. It is much better than they had, but is still very inadequate for our needs. Marilyn is called to go on a 3-month proselytizing mission. Wednesday, February 21st. 1962, Marilyn left this morning. The elders take her and her luggage to the mission home. We will miss her. There is a feeling of emptiness in the house. After being set apart, she attends an elders' conference at Wythenshawe Chapel. She calls us in the evening from the mission home, saying she is going to Blythe, quite some distance north from here, and a little way into Scotland. She sounds happy on the telephone. February 22nd, 1962. I miss Marilyn. She took a train north this morning. It's very cold today. Elders Tolman and Christensen bring their group of elders, 12 of them. Elder Christensen and I cook waffles and hot cakes for them. They all wanted to know if I had heard from Marilyn. The wind is blowing, shrieking with wild gusts. The tall Lombardy toss in frenzy, and I am thinking of Marilyn in the north of England where it is still colder. About every 2 weeks, the Colob elders, top elders in the district, who do nothing but travel and encourage other elders, stay overnight with us. They usually ring the doorbell rather late, wanting to know if they can borrow some floor space for the night. They have their sleeping bags and can spread them out on our comfortable red carpet in the living room. We have a wonderful time together, laughing and visiting. At night, they take MD and myself to a steak supper in Manchester at a steakhouse. Very delicious. For breakfast, they cook pancakes. Elder Arneson and Taylor stay until Tuesday. February 23, 1962. Marilyn writes that she and Sister Riddle, her companion, the SE supervising elder, and 2 other elders visit Edinburgh Castle in Scotland on their day off. She says she is enjoying herself. I make my first English trifle, which is very interesting and good. It is a layer of ladyfingers in a pink glass bowl, some sherry over the ladyfingers, a layer of fruit, a layer of Jell-O covered with English custard. Pour rich cream on top, decorate with cherries and slivered almonds and a sprinkle of coconut. It is for the Relief Society dinner in the Wythenshawe Chapel. Sunday, a very spiritual sacrament meeting at which MD and I spoke. Also, Brother Vernon of the High Council, who said to me afterwards, "We really love you and Brother Neuffer. Whenever I go to do something, I say to myself, would Brother or Sister Neuffer do this? It made me feel very humble. I hope we can be as good as these people think we are." Monday, I have been thinking of home today, of Cynthia who has rheumatic fever. She's been so good to write to us. I think of Mike in Spokane. I wonder if he realizes how much I love and think of him and the dear days in Bozeman with our loved ones dropping in to see us. How sweet and precious were those fleeting days. A really wonderful day at the London Temple, where we go through 2 sessions. Afterwards, we walked in the temple grounds, so beautiful with hyacinths, tulips, and daffodils sprinkled among the tall, slender trees and green lawns. We counted at least a dozen large goldfish in a shallow pool. I shall never forget the sight and the essence radiating from those hyacinths. MD and I visit the future mission home at Hale. In the near future, when he can find time, he will remodel it. The church has just purchased the place, which at one time was an Austrian embassy. It is an old estate named The Orchard. It is beautiful beyond description. Rich tapestry covers the walls. There is a pink marble fireplace in the master bedroom, so smooth it feels like cold velvet to the touch. Ye Old English sayings on the ceiling of the dining room, oak wood carvings of flowers, and again on the ceiling of other rooms, huge wreaths of roses done in white plaster of Paris. It is so gorgeous I could look at it forever. There are huge windows overlooking a lovely garden of weeping willows and magnolias. The rhododendrons bloom in all shades of pink, red, and lavender. The magnolias are bursting into bloom, and a bright red flowering quince climbs up the side of the house. A rainbow carpet of daffodils and spring flowers sprinkle the green lawns. There are horse stables, a greenhouse, and a clear stream of water running through the grounds. Rustic seats are placed beneath the trees. What a magnificent place, and what gracious living must have been done here. I think of England's poor people and the slums that are so evident and so near. But here in the Hale area one can forget the sordid, for surely this is a place of culture and fine living. An especially nice day today. How these birds can sing. Petals from the flowering almond in the backyard are carpeting the grass. The sight is breathtaking. Princess Parkway is a mass of pink bloom. I see it from the big red bus as it rolls swiftly by. An announcement of Camille's graduation came from 10 Sleep, Wyoming. I sent her a telegram of congratulations. I would love to be home for the occasion. MD brought me a pink bouquet of rhododendrons from the mission home. I have washed, ironed, made curtains for a bedroom, typed blessings, written to Marilyn, cleaned the house, and am ready for bed, contemplating a trip to Nottingham tomorrow. Oh yes, I also trimmed some berry bushes with our new clippers. They are marvelous. Sunday. A really nice day. My Sunday school class was quite successful, I felt. It is always nice to see everyone, for one can't help loving these people. Brothers Bergen and Reagan, my 2 morale builder uppers, were there and greeted me with their usual, "Hello, Blossom, I am wonderful now I have seen you," from Brother Bergen, and Brother Reagan's usual, "Hello, gorgeous." I love my class of young people. They seem to like me. I will miss them when I leave. May 20th. Today is Paul's birthday. How I wish I could be with him. I miss him so much and all my beloved family at home. I am busy getting supper for our boys. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, vegetables, rolls, and carrot pudding. Marilyn returns home from her mission in the far north of England. Guidepost. We are so glad to see her. We meet her at the Manchester train depot. As the train pulls in, MD walks ahead of me, not knowing where she will alight. He walks right by her, not expecting her to have a hat on, one to match her green knit coat. We laugh all the way home and talk about so many things. She has had a wonderful experience and is glad to be home. We laugh about the Bobby police officer who she met on arriving there. It seems she had to clear her passport with the police department. Later, she gets a very gentlemanly letter asking if she will go with him to the policeman's annual ball, saying he was interested in hearing about her religion. It would be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She would be attending the ball with him and could tell him about her religion at the same time. The next Sunday she talks in church. What a fine talk. We are very proud of her. She and I have many things to do before she leaves for home, probably early winter. Elder Christensen sends red roses to me for Mother's Day. He is traveling with the Kolob elders now. Monday, we have a pancake breakfast. Marilyn and Elder Christensen do most of the cooking. Elder Cole invites us to go to Wakefield with him. A lovely ride. We see much new country and have dinner at a quaint inn. Take pictures. Wednesday. We have many interesting experiences as we ride all over most of the city of Manchester. The 3 of us are asked to speak often in the outlying little towns around Manchester and Stockport. These experiences are dear to us, for we love these people who are so appreciative of the things we are doing for them. People come from all parts of the surrounding area to visit the chapel site and see how things are progressing. We are truly blessed to be here doing the Lord's work. We appreciate more fully what we have at home in America as we mingle with the people and see how very little some of them have. Yet they are so happy, plucky, and always singing and laughing at their work. Knowing of our occasional homesickness, one day the elders came all excited and asked us if we would like to go to Montana and Wyoming. We look at them doubtfully, so they say. As we ride towards style woods that we have never seen in Bluebell, in the elders' van, we are a little excited. We enter a beautiful wood or park. It is too wild for a park, however. There are footbridges across a clear stream of water bordered with Boston fern, lacy, green, and luxuriant, worn footpaths beneath deciduous old trees. The atmosphere is entirely silent, serene, and beautiful. After walking for some time in this paradisiacal retreat, we emerge suddenly into an area completely different, with dry sage, pines, and rocky soil. It is just like home, just a small area. We can't believe our eyes. We can hardly take our eyes off home, as we call it, as we breathe in the pungent smell of the sage and pines. A baptismal at night, MD and I are asked to speak. A Sister Richardson is baptized. It is all very spiritual and wonderful. When we meet the elders for the first time, they always say, "Oh, Neuffers, we have heard of you." Next day, we catch a bus at Stockport and ride with the Stockport branch people to Preston, England, where we attend quarterly conference. It is the first one held there since President Brigham Young presided over one in 1839. There are 1,500 people in attendance. MD sat on the stand. I was very proud of him. I sat with the elders. Marilyn and I attend a missionary conference at Wythenshawe at which President Henry D. Moyle is the visitor, as well as Apostle Gordon B. Hinckley, Tanner, and Elder Hanks, Marion. All the elders from the North British Mission are there. There are so many elders whom we hadn't seen for some time. They all wanted to say hello to us. It is very gratifying to see how eager and happy they are to see us. They certainly are a fine group of young men and women. Elder Tolman said to me afterward, "Mom, when you and Marilyn walked into the chapel, there was a furor of excitement that went through the whole group." It's nice to be liked and respected. Many of the elders come to our home afterwards to visit. The highlight of the conference are the talks by President Moyle and Elder Hinckley. Each talked for 2 hours. Such spirituality I have never witnessed in such great depth before. Both stressed living God's commandments, and there would be no need to fear anything. Marilyn and I went home with a new determination to try harder to live better. A dance at night in Stockport. The building missionaries are allowed to dance. Monday. We and our building missionaries are leaving Wednesday morning for a trip to the seashore in Wales. We stop at Chester, an ancient city, and look through an old church. We visit Conway Castle, which stands magnificently beside the blue North Sea. We camp by the seashore at night. Marilyn and I sleep in the van. MD and the boys are in sleeping bags on the ground. The seacoast of the North Wales country is quaint and serene, with many resorts where well-to-do people are on holiday. I love the green hillsides stretching down to the sea and the clean, neat houses. It is a little cool, but Marilyn, Jeffrey, Arthur, and Bill kick off their shoes and stockings and run barefoot on the sandy beach out to the sea and frolic like kids just let out of school. Lacy green ferns decorate each hill and cove. We stop at Elandudo, where MD, Arthur, Ron, and I wander along the beach picking up seashells. We walk to the end of a large pier and feed the gulls. One of them greedily lights on MD's shoulder and grabs bread from his hand with its beak. We arrive home thoroughly tired but happy. A lovely and interesting trip. That night, Marilyn directs an MIA play. I spend the evening at the chapel site, helping the sisters clean out the tool shed in MD's office. When I get home, I find a flower vase filled with sweet peas on my bedroom windowsill, with a note attached saying, "I love you," signed Marilyn. There is a sweet letter from Camille Carter to Marilyn, saying how much she needed Marilyn to talk over her problems with. We both read the letter and cry a little. Summer 1962. We have a wonderful summer together, the three of us with the missionaries and the dear English people. MD is busy with the chapel. He and our boys are doing so well, and it is progressing in a fine manner. We are invited for dinner to the Stanways, who live at Paynton, a very posh area. They have spent 12 years in Rhodesia, South Africa. Our visit with them is very enjoyable. Mr. Stanway has been laying brick on the chapel. We have our missionaries over to supper. They come early in the afternoon. They are a sweet lot. Alan and Mike paint the outside window frames on the house, while Arthur makes bibbery pie using self-rising flour. The pies are delicious. As I watch him make them, I have my doubts, but they are so good, all of us eat much too much. He served them with a warm custard sauce. While Arthur is busy finishing his pies, Jeffrey makes chips or French fries, as we call them at home, and Marilyn makes hamburgers. Everything tastes so good, and everyone has such a great time. It is good for them to have a little time off from their daily work. They are so faithful. Arthur, who is the oldest, is a little set in his ways, but we love him and get along fine. A wonderful afternoon and evening. Wednesday, September 13th, 1962. Another conference in London. There are 165 young building missionaries, a testimonial wherein many bear their testimonies. They come from all parts of England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and the Netherlands. To see and hear them express their gratefulness at being here is a choice experience. One young man from Ireland told of being on the same building site with President Mackay as he visited Ireland to dedicate a new chapel. The youth said how great was his feeling as he stood on the same ground as a prophet of God, and he said 5 hours after, Satan was there as this youth, almost killed another missionary when a wheelbarrow fell from above, striking him on the head. The youth said, "I thought I had killed him as I looked and saw him covered in blood." He was administered to then taken to a hospital where he stayed for 3 days. Then the youth added, "But he is here at this conference just as good as ever." Then, as tears ran down his face, he smiled and remarked with Irish wit, "And he's just as stupid as ever." Only an Irishman could say this and make it sound funny. Another Scotch missionary, a convert of a few weeks, bore his testimony and said, "I have received more love since I joined the church than I ever received in my whole life." The last night of our conference, the young people conducted a get-together in the foyer of the hotel where we slept. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing while the older ones were in a meeting, but soon a crowd gathered. As I went through to retire to my rooms, they asked me to stay, so I sat on the top of the stairway and watched with tears in my eyes. My heart was filled with emotion as these young people took part in one of the most spiritual, spontaneous programs ever. They sang, danced, put on skits, which were marvelous and reverent, ending with all kneeling in prayer. I shall never forget this choice experience. Marilyn and Jeffrey and all our boys were there. We come home feeling spiritually and physically renewed, tired but happy. Marilyn, Jeffrey, and I fall asleep in the living room and are awakened by the elders calling. There is MIA in the evening. Time goes so swiftly. Marilyn left for home on December 18th, 1962. We miss her. She had a 1.5 years of wonderful experiences and met her husband-to-be here in England. She spent Christmas in Bozeman with the family and is now in California, where she will be married sometime in the future to Elder Ronald Tolman. We spend Christmas in London with friends at the Lewis Moors. We have an enjoyable time even though the water pipes freeze up in the house, making it necessary for us to carry water upstairs to the bathroom. We see some fine shows, My Fair Lady, a stage production, and How the West Was Won in Cinerama. It was magnificent. We also saw The Longest Day. We visited Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, where MD and I mistook a live guide for a wax figure. No doubt he did this for laughs. MD stood real close and stared him in the eye until I, who had caught on, pulled MD's coattail. After we moved on a step or two, we suddenly glanced back to see his hand go up to his face. We laughed the rest of the day. We come home one day earlier than we had planned because of blizzard conditions in Epsom, London, and all the way home, which made Montana blizzards seem tame. We barely made it. Every time we got stopped, 2 of the men jumped out and pushed, and away we went. There were cars helplessly stalled all along the way, not knowing what to do. Coming from Montana, we felt right at home, however. This winter of 1962 to 63 is the coldest winter England has experienced in 100 years. It is called the Winter of the Great Freeze. Many places in the south of England are snowbound. We are glad to get home to our Christmas mail, which is in a large pile under the door slot where it is dropped, and to find Elders Thompson and White had kept the heat on so that it would be fairly warm. It is never very warm. I wear 3 pair of hose and my legs are still cold. We are overjoyed and thrilled with our Christmas mail from home. Monday, January 31st, 1963. Elders Thompson and White take me out to Paynton to see a fox hunt. We are thrilled at the idea, but we find it has been postponed because of bad weather. We are disappointed. February 17th, Elders Thompson and White are leaving for home tomorrow. We always hate to see the elders leave. We miss them so. These two especially. They will stay with us tonight. We will paste stickers on their suitcases. They are going to visit Denmark and Sweden. They said goodbye this morning as they left to catch their train in Manchester. Just before boarding it, Elder Thompson calls on the telephone to say goodbye again. He says, "Thanks for all you have done for me, and cheerio, I love you." Elder White calls and says, "Hello, Angel, you helped me to be a better missionary. Goodbye." These are the things I will remember. Then Elder Lambert called. We had a good visit and laughed about old times. What a wonderful day. To know these fine young missionaries think so much of me is heartwarming. I love them all. Marilyn and Ronald Tolman were married March 21st, 1963. I received permission to fly to Los Angeles for the wedding. They were married in the Los Angeles Temple. Everything was beautiful, especially Marilyn in her wedding gown of lace and satin with a long train. It was rather sad for me as I had wanted it to be at home among our many friends and relatives. The reception was lovely with many in attendance. However, Frank, Paul, and Vicky and Beth were all in attendance. But it didn't seem right without M.D., who, of course, was in England working on the chapel. I stayed for about 2 weeks visiting the children. As much as I enjoyed visiting and seeing them again, I was anxious to get back to England where I belonged at M.D.'s side. On the way, I stopped off and visited Gerald's family in Missouri, returning to England sometime in April. As I boarded the plane, John Neuffer gave me a beautiful orchid. How elegant I felt. On arrival in London, I was waiting at the end of a long queue of people who, in turn, were waiting to get through customs. The line was moving terribly slow. A security officer, in handsome uniform, walked along the line of impatient people. When he came near me, I held out my passport saying, "United Kingdom, please," whereupon he asked me to follow him. As he escorted me past the long line of people, I felt their envious eyes burning my back. I went completely through and to the lounge below, thinking to myself, whatever happened to get such attention? Dad and I laughed at it afterwards. He said they must have thought I was an ambassador's wife with my huge orchid, which John gave me, pinned on my lapel. I never had any idea the words United Kingdom could work such magic. July 4th, 1963, M.D., and I drive to Haworth, the home of the Brontes. We are at a loss for words as we walk in the silent old cemetery in the museum, which at one time was their home. As we look over the vast, lonely moors, we can very easily place ourselves back in the days in which the famous books were written. As we pause in the cemetery sunlight, shadows and intermittent raindrops mingle with the caw-caw of crows, black and huge. We eat lunch at a quaint little dining room nearby. Then we head for home, going down the Pennines, England's most prominent mountain range. July 15, 1963. I have worked hard today and so retired early, reading my Sunday school lesson in bed. One had just turned off the light when a strange thing happened. Suddenly it seemed my bedroom door was flung open, making the usual loud squeak. Someone or something stood beside me, and a great force pulled the bed covers from me, as if a great gust of chilling wind. The cold I felt was as a great desolation. The presence, shaking with wrath, leaned close to my face. I thought it would take hold of me, but it didn't. It shook with rage and whispered, "Damn," just as an angry person would do. Then suddenly it went out the door again. I was trembling with fright. The first words on my lips were, "Oh, Heavenly Father, stay near me," which took away the moments of horror I had experienced. To some, this may seem to be a nightmare or a dream, but it has a much deeper significance, for I had been wide awake. For a week I had uttered these words, "Father in heaven, stay near me and help me to do thy will, not mine, for I feel that I could do more." This has been one of the hardest weeks of our mission. I have felt so close to the Lord in my desire to do right, which is the most glorious happiness one can know, and yet I have felt the forces of evil trying to pull the spiritual feeling from me. My greatest desire is to do the will of the Lord, for I know this is more important than being at home with my loved ones whom I miss so much. I am grateful for His Spirit, which I have felt in great abundance. Paul was married to Vicky Goodsell, May 11th, 1963, in Oakland, California. Of course, we were not at the wedding, but Gerald and Margaret and Ron and Marilyn attended the reception in Reno in June. Gerald drove from Columbia, Missouri. September 1963. We have just had word from Gerald that he and Margaret will be touring Europe, visiting the universities of Europe, and attending an International Geneticists Congress at The Hague, Holland, where he has been asked to give a scientific paper on genetics. We are so happy about it and are looking forward to their arrival. We arose early today, thinking Gerald must surely telephone us for directions to find our home. But of a sudden, they walked in. How nice it is to see them. Tomorrow, MD and I leave by plane to attend a building seminar in London. In the meantime, Gerald and Margaret will visit Cambridge University, where he has business to attend to. Then we will meet at the London Temple, a day of meetings at the Felbridge Hotel. In the early evening, we all meet at the temple for supper and a session. Gerald and Margaret meet us also. Next morning after breakfast, the four of us leave and visit the Tower of London. Then home to Manchester to plan our trip to Holland. Gerald and Margaret visit the chapel site. Next day, the four of us leave for London in Gerald's car, a Volkswagen which they had purchased in Wolfsburg, Germany. It's so enjoyable viewing the countryside as we ride. Going through London, we drive through Devon. Some of Mother's people were from here. For some reason, I feel that I have been here in this place before. Its houses and their surroundings are so similar to the houses in Willard, Utah, which the early saints built. The country is quiet and rather tranquil. It is free from industrial plants and factories. Soon we come to the White Cliffs of Dover, of which I have read and wondered how they looked. I think I have seen too many beautiful hills and mountains at home to appreciate them, however. They are more like bluffs rising straight up from the English Channel. Their whiteness is quite outstanding to look at, and the many boats or ferries below make an interesting sight. As we near the ferry landing, the traffic is terribly congested. It seems that all as well as ourselves are headed for Calais, France, on the ferry which crosses the Channel. We have to change our plans and catch a ferry to Ostend, Belgium, instead of Calais. We leave at 11 p.m. Gerald, Margaret, and I stand on deck to the very front of the boat. How thrilling it is to face the brisk wind, to sail across the waters and watch the moonlight on the waves. We wish that it were light so we could look back at the White Cliffs of Dover. After riding or sailing for 3 hours, we try to get some sleep. There are no accommodations. All are filled. This trip was no fun for Dad as he got seasick. He just disappeared and then showed up again at the end of the voyage, Gerald's note. We land in Ostend just before daylight and drive to a parking lot where we sleep until daylight. As we look around the city, we like it very much. It seems as if everything, houses and buildings, had just been scrubbed. As we leave Ostende, we notice the houses are unusually tall, as if they had been cut from another or sliced into two. The country is flat, lovely, green and clean. Everywhere the grain and mounds of freshly cut hay are lying in the fields, a rich bronze and green. We arrive in Den Haag, The Hague, about noon. Gerald finds us sleeping rooms overlooking the North Sea. This is a nice hotel where many international conferences are held. Gerald registers at the Congress, after which we find a quaint eating place. Today, the big day, when our being in Holland begins. Little did we ever dream that someday the four of us would be here, that the little country boy with his many rows of seedlings long ago on the farm would be presenting a scientific paper before an international congress. It's exciting. MD and I are very proud. While Gerald is in meetings, MD, Margaret, and I visit the beach of the vast blue North Sea. There are many tourists and gift shops. Margaret and I go shopping and almost get lost. The clothes in the windows are lovely. At night, Gerald introduces us to some of his friends, a couple from Italy. Gerald occasionally gets a little free time, and we steal away to see everything we can. The hotel where Gerald attends his meetings is a beautiful structure with a huge dome. It's the largest in Den Haag, towering over the city and overlooking the North Sea. From its dome, many flags of different nations wave majestically in the breeze. It is a thrilling sight. We drive into the fish market to watch the fishing boats come in with their huge loads of herring and unload them into giant baskets. Gerald and MD try the popular tourist custom of downing fresh raw herring directly from the basket. We leave for Amsterdam after a marvelous few days in The Hague. As we ride along, we see flat fields and a few windmills, huge canals and green-carpeted fields and meadows, very picturesque and lovely. Amsterdam is a huge, interesting city with man-made canals, boats, and snarled traffic. We hire a boat and sail on a wide waterway with houses built on its edges. We visit a diamond polishing works, where MD buys me a blue-white diamond to replace the I lost. By noon it is pouring rain and all the eating places are full, so we buy apples and bananas and eat them in the car. We visit a famous art gallery where world-renowned paintings hang. We can hardly pull ourselves away. There is a room of Rembrandt and Van Gogh paintings which fascinates me. We visit the house where little Anne Frank was hiding during the war. It seemed to be a large house near the center of the city, with many rooms and an unusually long, high stairway leading to the many upstairs rooms. As we looked at it, we tried to visualize little Anne Frank living here in fear each day. At last, it's time to say goodbye, and we are reluctant to leave. What a wonderful time we have had. Gerald and Margaret take us to our plane. They will stay at The Hague for more meetings until the 12th of September, and we will be in England in 45 minutes. September 15th. MD and I visit Leek, Staffordshire, the little city where my great-grandmother, Anne Agatha Walker, Book 1, P5, lived as a girl. We walk along the street where her mother had a hat shop. It is interesting to look at the old buildings. There are 5 of them among more modern ones. We try to visualize which one the family occupied. Later, the family resided in Manchester, where the father was a schoolmaster. We go into an old church and look over its records. We can find nothing and decide we'll have to come back later, for time sneaks upon us and we must leave. We were shocked and saddened when we heard of the assassination of the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, on November 22, 1963. The English people were saddened, and many came to us expressing sympathy for us and the American people. Manchester, England, January 7, 1964. Letter written by Camille to children telling of Christmas trip on the continent. Dearest family, I am glad Christmas is over. We got homesick for you, even though we were having a wonderful time in Rome. As you know, we left Manchester on the 20th of December. It was so cold and foggy, we could hardly find the train station where we met 8 other couples. We were all dressed to the hilt by way of keeping out the cold. Fur hats, imitation that is, boots, scarves, coats, and sweaters. We met the rest of the party at Luton, just outside London, which made 70 people. Then we boarded a plane for Munich, Germany. We had been so rushed all day that we had not bothered eating, thinking that we would get a nice meal on the plane. The meal turned out to be a box lunch, and we had to look real close to find the ham, crackers, and carrot sticks. You can probably see the expression on Dad's face. We all felt cheated and sorry for ourselves. And on arriving at Munich, we found that one of our suitcases was missing, the one which Frank gave to Dad, with all of MD's clothes, except those that he wore. It was very cold, with snow piled everywhere. But as I looked out the window of our very lovely room and saw the wide, modern streets all lit up with Christmas beauty and the bustling crowds below, Munich is a beautiful city, and the snow-white bedding on our beds, so clean and different from England's smoke, I decided we are not going to let some lost luggage spoil our trip. By this time, the airlines had called and found that it was not in London, nor had it been on our plane. We rise early in the morning, and after a continental breakfast of rolls and hot chocolate, we all hurry out to see the city and do a little shopping. We buy a drip-dry shirt for MD. I wash it out each night, and it looks as though it were ironed. I had to buy me some pumps in Rome as mine were in the lost bag. In Munich, we saw some Russian hats for the men in the family. I wanted to buy them, but they were terribly expensive. I made myself feel better by saying they probably wouldn't fit anyway. Before I go further, you may think that 70 people are too many to have a good time, but they were all close friends and all from home. We had 2 couriers, guides, and 2 drivers, who were the best ever. From Munich, we took huge, comfortable buses. Our courier's name was George, a typical Londoner. We called him Crafty George because of his cleverness and diplomacy. It was amusing to see him go to a hotel where our reservations had already been made, to state that his party had arrived, and to see how everyone on the staff snapped to attention. It almost made us feel important. Everything in the way of meals and accommodations is better than we expected, except we ate miles and miles of spaghetti in Italy. Getting back to Munich, we leave here and ride in buses or coaches to Innsbruck. Innsbruck is a bright jewel cupped in snow-glazed mountain peaks jutting into the sky. Its quaint little shops glow with Christmas decorations and are all roofed in. A small cathedral in all white and gold decor nestles at the feet of the majestic peaks. The air is so cold our breath looks like smoke. We are enchanted with this colorful place and excited as we want to see everything in this winter paradise. This will interest Marilyn. As we are eating supper at a quaint little inn, I happen to look up and there stands Franz Wallner. I can hardly believe my eyes. He came thinking that he may see us, as he had heard that some Americans from England were in Innsbruck. We were so overjoyed to see each other. He dashed away to get his wife, and we had a wonderful half-hour's visit. Marilyn, he asked about you first of all. I guess the rest of the families aren't aware of it, but while Marilyn was with us, everyone fell in love with her, and they are still asking about her. Franz said to give his love to you, Marilyn. Franz was the one who met us at the plane in Germany when we arrived there in 1961. He was about the only person belonging to the building program who was not on holiday. He had to find us living quarters as well as act as our interpreter. Remember, Marilyn, when the pounds dropped off and we thought we may starve, and all we could see were those tall glasses of foaming beer and Wiener schnitzels? Getting back to Franz, who is an Austrian and was a prisoner of war in Idaho Falls during World War II, while there, the Mormons were so good to him that when he got home, he later joined the church. Then he and his wife immigrated to Salt Lake City. They had been there 6 months when he was called back in Germany on a mission as purchasing agent in Frankfurt for the church building program. Recently, the church started building a chapel in Innsbruck, Austria. The people were so hostile, they said no one could build there without an Austrian building license. So Franz, who had a license, was sent for and is building a chapel there now. He is still his same sweet self, and even better looking than when we saw him earlier. Our seeing him again was very special. Traveling through the Bavarian Alps is just like riding through Bridger Canyon, only of course much more so, and we enjoyed it. Going over the Brenner Pass is very interesting. As you remember, this is where Hitler and Mussolini met to make their decisions during the war. Our courier called them our 2 little pets. We had some refreshments here and took a picture on the sly of the calm winter scene. Mountains covered with deep snow with the dark evergreens clustering the mountainsides. It is not permissible to take pictures here. At Venice, Italy, we really celebrated like a lot of kids. It's an enchanted isle. The people are friendly, and the little shop windows are filled with everything imaginable, beautiful clothes and gifts. We females just drooled and wished we were rich. I bought a gold-plated cup and saucer, china. The little streets are nothing but narrow alleys. Venice, as you probably know, is a city without cars, which makes it so different. It is interesting to see the women riding gondolas to do their shopping. They don't sit down like we do, but stand well-balanced and very graceful as the gondolas glide noiselessly over the water. Our hotel is lovely, and we just step through its doors to the shops. We hardly take time to eat our meals of spaghetti and dessert, of fresh pears, apples, and peaches, so delicious they might have been plucked from a Garden of Eden. There are so many things to see. In the evening, we get into gondolas and sail up and down the canals or waterways singing Christmas carols, with the native people joining in. And oh, how they can sing. As we sail by their windows, there are no sidewalks. It's as if the whole city were afloat. They lean out and wave to us amidst their singing. We are reluctant to leave this Isle of Enchantment with its friendly, colorful people and friendlier pigeons. We throw crumbs to them, and they swarm all over us, much to our delight and fear. However, they only leave feathers and dandruff all over our hats and shoulders. What fun. The next morning, we dutifully follow Crafty George to the boat, which takes us to the mainland, where our buses are waiting. We lunch at Bologna. We attack the baskets of delicious rolls as if we hadn't eaten for days, and the waiters are always mystified when we ask for butter. The food is most always of the best quality and good. We tire of spaghetti, but the lasagna we love. We always get fresh fruit for dessert. Pears so large, we have to cut them in halves. The spaghetti and lasagna is only the first course. There is meat, potatoes, and vegetables. The meat is usually chicken, but not too good. In the afternoon of the 24th, we crossed the Apennine Highway to Pisa. We all felt quite frisky and swarmed around the tower. MD really felt smart and declared that he was going to climb to the top. I tried to persuade him not to, as I was afraid he was not quite fit. But he went right to the top, so I thought I would try it. After climbing to the second story, I walked to the outer side. It was rather frightening looking down, which was enough for me. Needless to say, MD was real quiet the rest of the day and wondered why his face was so red. The tower is really something to see. We stayed in Pisa overnight and had a Christmas party with gift exchange and everything to make a party complete. Christmas Eve in a strange, faraway land. It was enjoyable, but we missed our loved ones at home. Christmas Day, we rode along the blue Mediterranean on our way to Rome. It was lovely and exciting, with the tranquil waters on one side and groves of love trees in the green fields and hillsides where oxen were seen being driven by the workers. The weather is warm, sunny, and perfect. Our hotel is fabulous and in the very heart of the city. The huge lounge has a beautiful Christmas tree, which glitters with tinsel and Christmas warmth. We love being here. The food is good, and everyone is in a festive mood. After supper, our courier, George, informs us that he has made arrangements for our party at a nightclub where we can hear some beautiful music. Our courier is very nice to us, understanding our position as missionaries. He is careful to inform us as what to order in the way of drinks so that we won't be embarrassed. The orchestra is excellent, and as we sit down, they play and sing beautifully, "I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas." Needless to say, we are deeply touched with emotion. We stay in Rome until Friday. It's a beautiful city with so much to see. We go through St. Peter's Cathedral. We see the Pope's living quarters, from outside, of course. We visit the Vatican, the underground catacombs, the Colosseum, the arena where the ancient gladiators fought, and walk through the ancient ruins. We see the art of Michelangelo. We can hardly leave. It is so beautiful. One evening we visit the markets, which along with the stores and all businesses open early each day, but all close their doors at 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. so that each person may have their siesta. The open market in the streets displays and sells most anything in the way of food, vegetables, fruit, live chickens, meats, cheese, head cheese, grisly-looking hogsheads hanging in the sun. I look at MD as he stands directly below one and snap a picture of him. We see a woman buy a live chicken from a boy and then stare in horror as he picks its feathers off, then wrings its neck. After seeing this, we don't feel like eating chicken. When supper was served, what do you think it was? Chicken. We are fascinated with the ruins of Pompeii where we wander for an afternoon, actually seeing some of the ancient buildings and ruins. What was at one time a fantastic sunken garden, streets of pure rock with carriage wheel tracks worn deep into them. We are especially interested to find at the bottom corner of a building a water system of pipes as modern as those we have today. We see many mummies which have been dug up or uncovered. The day is sunny and Mount Vesuvius looks very mysterious and quite gentle, with a light, fluffy cloud hanging over its tip. Our evening boat ride to the Isle of Capri is exciting. We all stand on deck watching the rippling blue waters and the receding lights of Pompeii. After landing, we ride quaint little trolleys up the steep mountain to our hotel. The isle is a paradise, a bright jewel aglitter in a blue sea. Then next morning we take taxis and ride all over the isle. The sun is bright on the emerald green isle. Later, we take a chairlift and ride right to the top, where we can look all over with the blue Mediterranean on all sides. The shops are fascinating, aglitter with jewels and gifts of every sort. Sunday, we take the ferry back to Naples, which is another paradise of beauty. We eat our lunch in a large restaurant overlooking the sea. We find a small branch of Latter-day Saints and surprise them greatly by all of us visiting them. They are so glad to see us, they are almost speechless and send out to get more bread for the sacrament. Monday, back to Rome. More sightseeing. Elma Ogden and I go shopping in the evening, after sending MD and her husband in another direction. They are always in a hurry, and we want to take our time and look at things. We have a marvelous time. We find a glove shop with the most beautiful kid gloves I have ever seen. I can't resist buying a few pair. We walk and look to our heart's content. We buy peanut brittle after watching a man make it. I will never forget the look on his face as I take an Italian coin from my purse and hand it to him, thinking it must certainly be worth the amount of the candy he gave me. On seeing the expression on his face, I decide that was not the right coin, so I give him the biggest one I have. He looks at it, then takes his huge knife and cuts off about 3 inches of the candy and gives it to me. We try to eat it on the way home, but we almost pull our teeth out. Anyway, when re-examining the coin, which I offered him first, the men informed us that it was worth about 1.50 pennies. We are still laughing. Oh well. Good news. Our suitcase has been found and will be waiting in London for us on our return. It has been to Paris, etc. Back to Florence through Perugia and Assisi, and a night in Florence. Sightseeing in the morning. More cathedrals. By this time we are getting tired of their cold gray walls. We have reservations for 2 nights here, but we aren't too pleased with our rooms, so our courier George tells the staff we are checking out, much to their horror. We take off for Milan. We had a rather amusing experience in Florence when we first stopped there a few nights previous. Our bus was so long that it was very difficult to turn some of the corners in the narrow streets. Oskar, the driver who is German and has a mind of his own, very much so, turning a corner just couldn't make the turn, as there were a few tiny cars in his way, and their drivers were parked and determined not to move. So they just sat, and we just sat while the crowd gathered, the traffic piled up and honked. We could see that Oskar was getting more frenzied by the minute. We were practically on top to the small cars. Finally, he got out and stared at the drivers real hard. Then jumped in the bus and roared his engine as if he were going right over the top of them. And you should have seen their little cars take to the sidewalk. We thought they would go right through the windows, and Oskar drove through. In Milan, we enjoyed ourselves and were able to get seats for an opera. It was Don Carlos, and the singing was something to dream about. The opera house itself was the famous Scala. We sat from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., listening to the most beautiful music we had ever heard, not understanding a word of it. We could hardly wait to get into Switzerland through the Bavarian Alps again, which, in a much larger way, of course, resembled Bridger Canyon. Our first meal was delightful and served family style with fresh vegetables and cold slaw. We ate bowls of it. One of our members was born and raised here, so he could tell us many interesting things, one of them being that the country, being peaceable, was really armed to the hilt in case of emergency. Every able-bodied man was a soldier and spent so much time each year training. He showed us fortifications in the mountains, which were ready to defend themselves, then added that, of course, they wouldn't stand much chance against a larger country, but they would die trying. At Bern, we are so happy to go through a session in the temple, which is small but quite lovely. I should have added that, on first entering Switzerland, we were surprised to see palm trees, and it was very warm. But as we went farther, it became colder, and at Zurich it was much more so. Our last night in Zurich, we go to a nightclub and listened to the most beautiful Swiss yodeling we had ever heard, and they too sang some American songs for our benefit, which again made us homesick. Afterward, we walked and looked in the little shop windows, and although we were all very near broke, we wished the shops had been open. Back in Munich the next day, we find that our plane can't take off because of fog. So we go to Stuttgart, and as soon as they saw the name of Neuffer on our plane ticket, they said, "Your lost luggage is in Munich." Disgusting. They had been instructed to send it direct to Luton, so there would be no slip-up again. When we landed in Luton, instead of asking us if we had anything to declare as we went through customs, they started apologizing for losing our luggage. We missed our train to Manchester, and because of the unexpected landing of the plane in Stuttgart, there had been no supper for any of us. Of course, we were all bulging at the seams from our gluttonous eating. So the men went out at 3 o'clock in the morning. After finding a warm ladies' restroom, I should say slightly warm, the men had no place to go, and it was terribly cold. This was in London at the train station, and nothing was open. We told a bobby or policeman we were hungry, whereupon he woke up a hotel manager and made him fix us cookies and milk. Inside of 15 minutes, the men were all in the ladies' restrooms, and we were all snoozing or gabbing. Another policeman walked in and looked rather horrified for a moment to see all the men there. Then, taking in the situation, he grinned and walked out. At 4:25 a.m., we caught a train for home, arriving at noon, dead broke, tired, and happy. The most exciting 16 days we have ever had. Thanks to all of you for the lovely gifts and money. We could hardly open the door on our arrival home for letters and other mail, which had been dropped through the slot in the door during our absence, and were we ever happy to get them. A seminar in London in January. Today is my birthday. Cards, letters, and hankies from home, and a surprise birthday party with 15 friends present. In the evening, I go to the chapel site to see it in its completion. I sit alone behind the pulpit, looking back through the chapel and recreation hall. I feel very proud of MD, for here, in all its beauty and magnificence, is something that will be a monument to MD and his missionaries as long as it stands. A feeling as if I were in a temple of the Lord, swept over my whole being. During the evening, we talked to many people who had come to view it. Saturday, February 7th, 1964. Early in the morning, MD and I, the building missionaries and proselytizing missionaries, held a testimony meeting. The elders praised MD and me and expressed their thanks to the Lord for our many blessings. A very inspirational meeting. At last, the chapel is finished, and we are planning our Thanksgiving services. Saturday evening. The opening meeting of the services at 3 p.m., we go to dinner at the Ogdens where we meet the Nielsens, Raymonds, and Pages, who are up from London for the occasion. Later, all of us go to Stockport, where we have a wonderful meeting. MD, our missionaries, and I sit on the stand. I was presented with a lovely bouquet of red roses, and MD received a large, unique gas candle. All of us spoke. Sunday, February 8th, 1964. A truly glorious day, meeting at 11 a.m., a huge crowd attending. MD and I spoke. It is gratifying to receive so many compliments and praise. This is a day of happiness and joy, for the saints have looked toward it for so long. As MDA and I came into the Thanksgiving services, the proselytizing elders met us at the door and pinned a corsage of orchids on me and a red carnation in MD's lapel. I really felt elegant. The chapel was decorated throughout with spring flowers. All the saints are so happy with their new chapel. What a lovely and wonderful day. After the services are over, 10 of us, the people visiting from London, sat down to a nice dinner at our place. The centerpiece was spring flowers from the Stockport market. We had baked ham, salads, rolls, and English trifle, and an enjoyable visit with the people from London. Geoffrey Haney gave me a stainless steel salt and pepper. He, Alan, and John Passy came to say goodbye. It is hard to bid them goodbye after our being together for so long. February 10th, 1964. It's all over. It doesn't seem possible that the chapel is completed, all those dear days of working together. Today, MD and I take Arthur, the last one of our missionaries, to his home in Huddersfield. We drive over the Pennines through the Yorkshire moors. We visit with his family for the first time. They are poor, but very nice. On the way home, on the edge of the moors, the van stops. Luckily, it is downhill to the nearest town, so we coast to a service station. Can't get it repaired tonight. We catch a bus to Oldham, from Oldham to Piccadilly and home. Very tired. 7 people come for blessings. February 13th, 1964. Gold and green ball tonight in the new Stockport Chapel. Ward members are thrilled. The chapel is lovely with its soft green drapes and carpet blending with the muted tones of the light and dark woodwork. February 16, 1964, MD and I attend Preston District Conference. We see many of the elders. At noon, we eat lunch with President and Sister Green, Apostle Mark Peterson, and Sister Peterson, who are up from London. MD gave some patriarchal blessings. a wonderful day. We just got home in time to get into the van and go to the ward conference at Stockport. Presidents Bates, Caddick, and Plumley were all present. February 23, 1964. We are invited to the mission home at the Greens. President Green of the North British Mission took President Thorne's place when the mission was divided. The dinner is in our honor as a going-home gesture. The time is getting short, and we especially enjoy the company of our friends. We will be leaving soon. February 27, 1964. Today, MD and I drive to the Royal Dalton Potteries and buy 6 small Toby jugs. Robinson Crusoe, Rip Van Winkle, Moby Dick, the Beefeater, and the Fortune Teller. They are quite fascinating. Then we drive to Bromyard, Herefordshire. My heart pounds with excitement because for the first time I am going to see the country from which my grandfather and grandmother Cole came from when they were young, even before they were married. As we near the place, a snowstorm comes on so furiously we have to take refuge in a real quaint English hotel called the Hop Pole. It is so quaint and old-fashioned we are delighted with its restfulness. Papered walls, fireplace, red carpet, and red drapes over white crinoline centers in the lounge. The warm colors are comforting. There are 2 friendly cats, an old-fashioned china closet, painted plates on the mantel, old brocade chairs, and a clean and cheery dining room where we visit with the guests. Our supper is mountain trout, potato balls, nice rolls, peas, Brussels sprouts, and a sweet. Before supper, however, as we are settling in our room, the proprietor, a rather peculiar man or woman, long-nosed, slight of build with hair which needed cutting, insists on serving us a hot drink and some cake. We sit in the lounge and enjoy it, as we are so glad to be in out of the storm. The snow is now falling in huge wee flakes and has already blanketed the ground with white. How good it is to be inside. The next morning we check out of our hotel, rather reluctant to leave its warmth and friendliness, but anxious to see Frome Hill just 6 miles away. It is beautiful country, with lush vegetation even at this time of year. The snow has melted. The houses are so familiar to those we have seen in Willard, Utah, where the people from this very place settled. Fruit orchards, hop fields, green rolling hills make this place seem so peaceful and rather a paradise after coming from Manchester. At Frome Hill, we call on an old man 87 years of age. He is soaking his feet. His mustache is yellow from pipe smoking. He remembers the Coles who had lived at Bishop's Frome Hill. We drive to this place and find some Coles. Bert Cole. He and his wife invite us in. The man sits with a white shirt on and a suit coat, as is typical of the English men. They make us welcome, serve hot drink and biscuits. We don't get much information here. It seems most of the Coles had left for America. As we leave, the lad takes us into the parlor and shows us a large portrait of a very handsome English gentleman, dressed in a black suit, a tall silk hat, a gold watch, etc. He is standing beside his bride, who is dark and very lovely. She is in a wedding gown of satin and lace with her hair dressed high on her head. This, the woman says, is her husband's father and mother. I was very glad she showed us this picture, for it told me these people were well-bred Englishmen. We drove back to Herefordshire and home to Manchester. It was a wonderful experience to stand on the very land where my father's people had lived long ago. March 14, 1964, MD and I are special guests at the Wythenshawe Chapel, where the South Manchester Ward puts on an elaborate supper in honor of our leaving. The tables and rooms are beautifully decorated with spring flowers. We all have a lovely time. Visited and danced with President Caddick. He is a marvelous dancer. March 15, 1964. The Stockport Ward gives a party in our honor in the new chapel. It is very touching when everyone forms a circle and sings the usual Old Lang Syne, ending with a typical hip hip hooray. A lovely supper and gifts from the Relief Society, a beautiful slip for myself. Sister Bond gives me an ivy plant to take home. March 17, 1964. We ride to the airport to exchange our English pounds for American dollars, then to Stockport, where we buy a sheepskin rug made in Sweden. It is red with black tips. In the evening, we go to Paynton to supper with Bill and Ann Stanway. We sit in front of a glowing fireplace and chat about South Africa, Rhodesia, where they have lived for 12 years. A supper of roast beef, dressing, salad, new potatoes, rolls, peaches with whipped cream, biscuits and cheese. Afterwards, a drink of hot chocolate in front of the fireplace. Anne gives me a gift-wrapped Toby jug from Royal Dalton. They are very dear friends, and we shall miss them. Thoughts on leaving. We have had 3 years of joy, happiness, some frustration, and the most wonderful feeling of accomplishment, for as I look at the magnificent building MD and his missionaries have built, my heart overflows with joy and pride. 3 years of working with the people and enjoying our mission, which has been so dear to our hearts. The Lord has sustained us, given us extra strength, for without His Spirit, how could we have done the things we have done? Fight the cold climate, the thousands of trips we have made safely in the congested traffic back and forth to Stockport, the strength to work all day and at night, to travel to outlying places to speak at meetings. The extra strength, good health, and vigor we have enjoyed are like an endless river, flowing on and on. It was very hard to leave these dear people we have learned to love. As we said goodbye, we knew a part of us would remain there. We left for home the 23rd of March. We never worried about packing as it was all done for us by expert moving vans. Except MD's passport was accidentally packed, and the next day after our things were loaded on a boat at Southampton, he discovered the mistake. Never did I hear of anyone rushing to London or Southampton as fast as he did, where he boarded the boat, looked through the things, and finally found it, much to everyone's relief and much ribbing from everyone. We stayed in London with friends overnight, and on the 24th of March, we boarded a jet plane for the States. Home we had none, so we visited with our family for some time. We returned enriched in spirit and blessings. We had property, but very little ready cash. We visited Gerald and family in Columbia, Missouri, Marilyn and Ron and little Paul in Los Angeles, Paul and Frank and families in Reno, Nevada, and lastly, Beth and Mark in Wyoming. We had no home to return to. What an insecure feeling. It was hard to adjust to the changes, and my heart ached at times. But one can never go back. Our lives had taken on new dimensions and depth. We had passed through a time so filled with joy and satisfaction, it was beyond all description. Our lives had been in the hands of the Lord who knew what was best for us. After visiting with our family for a few months, MD was called to Las Vegas to build another chapel. How different. Again, we had to adapt to a different climate. In England, we had continually been cold. Now here the temperature soared. The heat almost made us ill. Again, we were in the mission field. Little did I know what was in store for us when I thought aloud on the summer walk in the twilight a long time ago. If one could only be patient and adhere to the lines, "Be still and know that I am God." For I know that He takes care of us. The saints in Las Vegas, as those before, took us to their hearts and loved us. Our days were filled with joy and work. I was appointed to take care of the social life of the building people in the area, such as arranging suppers and get-togethers, which is a great morale builder to those away from their family and home. MD used his energy in building the chapel. He became ill, and it was necessary that he take some time off. Another supervisor took his place. When he had recovered, we were sent to Scottsdale, Arizona, to help finish a chapel there. Again, we found new friends and acquaintances. We were in Arizona almost 2 years, and then we received our release. We were quite unsettled. We went back to Reno for some time. Then we spent quite some time at Columbia, Missouri, with Gerald's family. This was a special time because it had been so long since we had lived near them. We enjoyed every minute with them. MD worked, and I worked in the college bookstore, which I enjoyed very much. I also worked at Boone County Hospital. But we were both a little homesick for the West. We spent a summer at Topeka, Kansas, which was quite an experience, for only a few weeks before a devastating tornado had hit part of the city. This was the first time we had ever seen the tragic results of a tornado. MD did some building to help some of the restoration. While living in Topeka, MD, myself, Gerald, and Margaret took a trip to New Orleans, traveling through Mississippian country we had never seen. It was a glorious trip. After leaving Topeka, we came home and spent a summer and up until Christmas in Ten Sleep, Wyoming, where MD built a house for Beth and Mark. This was a pleasant interval. We lived nearby in a trailer house, and it was such a joy being near Beth and her family. When the house was completed, we went to Maryland's and spent Christmas and thought some of building near Bountiful, Utah. It seemed as though we just couldn't decide. It seemed as though there was nothing else for us to do. I felt pangs of insecurity and restlessness and tried to be patient. I longed for a home. For 7 years, our household things had been stored away. For the last 3 years, I had used the trunk of our car for real personal keepsakes. We felt we had to put down roots somewhere. But where? Our family had scattered. Where to make a home, we didn't know. Montana seemed an empty and lonely charm without any of our family there. But again, the Lord knew of our need, for He still had work for us to do. August 28, 1967, Monday. Wonderful thoughts of the past week when Marilyn and boys have visited us here in Ten Sleep, Wyoming. Gerald and family have stayed at Beth and Mark's the last few days before our long-planned family reunion held in Bridger Canyon at Frank's home. It was joyous from beginning to end. Everyone made a special effort to attend. All were so happy to see one another. On Friday the 26th, Marilyn, her boys, Tom Carter, and myself left Ten Sleep for Bozeman at 6 a.m., the car so loaded we couldn't have taken another person. On arriving at Frank's, we found everything in well-planned order. Frank was happy to see us. He had traveled from Seattle, Washington the day before. He had rented beds and hauled them from Bozeman so everyone could be comfortable. Cynthia was at the hairdresser. The house looked beautiful with wild flowers placed in each room, the names on each door signifying who was to occupy what room. Frank had even put logs on the fireplace in the den where I was to sleep. His den, which looked out and across the green valley at the huge mountains in Mount Ross. The fire was ready to be lighted. Each room bid a cheery welcome to us as we went happily from one to the other. We hugged and laughed excitedly with Frank and the children. It was Garth who had put the names on each door with such style and care. 2 hours later, Camille arrived with some of the younger children. Then Gerald, with his carload, and Dad included. Mark and Beth came next with the rest of the family. Just when we were wondering about Paul and Vicky, they came with Kelly, Mike, and Mark. Everyone was so happy to see them, especially the nieces, who swarmed around Paul. I saw a tear in Marilyn's eye as she hugged Vicky and Paul. She was so happy. Ron Tolman came later with a new car. After much talking, we bedded down for the night. Most of the youngsters slept in their sleeping bags. Tomorrow was indeed a big day. After a breakfast of scrambled eggs, sweet rolls, and orange juice, everyone scattered for fun. Most of the grown-ups went up above the house to pick wild huckleberries, their talk, laughter, and happiness echoing in the quietness of the wooded surroundings. Later, everyone assembled for a lunch of sandwiches, salad, potato chips, cookies, and etc. In the afternoon, some visited and others went to Bozeman on errands. The youngsters were happy and agreeable and having a good time. Then came the big night with barbecued steaks and a bonfire. There was potato salad, corn on the cob, mustard pickles, and a huge cake brought by Mrs. Hepburn, which had the words Nuffer Reunion 1967 decorated with red roses. After the supper, all settled down for a program around the fire. The setting was spectacular with the quiet, pine-clad mountains over all. It was breathtaking. The meadow rang with laughter and merrymaking. The first number on the program was a comedy impersonation by Dale Nuffer. Beth and her girls sang a song. Their harmony was sweet. Frank's children gave a few numbers of harmonizing and impersonation. My heart sang with pride and joy, for the grandchildren were the sweetest ever. Later, we went in the house and sat in front of the fireplace and discussed many things such as reunions, Christmas, names, etc. We had a wonderful time together, ate watermelon, and enjoyed each other. When all were tired, we reluctantly sought our beds and peaceful, happy sleep. Sunday morning we rose early. It was laughable how we queued for the bathroom privileges. Breakfast consisted of toast, cantaloupe, and orange juice. Everyone was busy getting ready to leave. How we hated to depart after such a joyful time. Beth and Mark left for Sunday school in Bozeman. Paul, Vicky, Mike, and Mark left for Seattle. Ron and Marilyn and family went to Seattle for a vacation, and Gerald and Margaret and family left for California, where Gerald was to be at Stanford University by a certain date. Tom, Bruce, and Richard left for Ten Sleep, Wyoming, leaving MD and myself left. Frank was busy getting ready to leave for Seattle. It was a never-to-be-forgotten family reunion, a time of love, happiness, and joy at seeing each other, the first time we all were together in 7 years because of our MD, Marilyn, and myself going to Germany, England, Las Vegas, Scottsdale, Marshalltown, Iowa, and different parts of Montana on a mission. MD built chapels for the church in many places. And I were happy to see the effort put forth by all who attended this first reunion. The grandchildren were happy and excited at seeing and getting acquainted again with their cousins. I am grateful for our wonderful family and the love I saw in the face of each during that joyous time together. We built our third Bozeman home. Frank drew up the plans for us. I told Frank I wanted a house that was different, and different it was. I loved every foot of it. It was located on our land east of town, much against my will. But once we had it started, we were excited as two youngsters and spent many days and hours perfecting its building. How happy I was to have a home again. We opened up our storage granary and took out our furniture and precious belongings. We had almost forgotten what we had stored 7 years before. Everything was in good shape, considering the length of time it had been stored. We loved our home. We could sit in the living room and look far across the valley to the sunlit peaks beyond. The high light-colored ceiling, the heavy black beams, the old brick fireplace with the Franklin stove, the old-fashioned attic with a balcony looking towards the hills above the house. Living in its restfulness was pure delight. Again, we were swept up in church work. We had thought we might rest for a while. I was called to be the first stake president of the Relief Society in the New Helena stake. MD was made High Councilman and later called to be Patriarch of the Helena stake. As we settled down in our lovely home, blessings seemed to pour over us like a waterfall. The days I had feared of being without sustenance and a home never materialized, for now we had a home and building jobs were plentiful. We enjoyed our work in the stake and found many new friends as well as the old. One is always happy when they are engaged in the Lord's work. We spent 3 years in Bozeman, during which time I had surgery 2 different times. One very serious, but I was able to carry on with my church work. At the end of that time, we asked to be released from our church work. Paul wanted MD to help him with some building projects. We spent 3 winters in Reno, Nevada. These times were very enjoyable, being near Paul and his family. The latter part of this time I was very ill. I had a serious car accident as MD, and I were traveling in October to Reno. A young bishop in Lovelock, Nevada, where I was hospitalized, administered to me, telling me I would recover. I shall never forget. As he laid his hands on my head, a heavenly feeling of deep warmth swept over me, and I began to improve. A week later, as I was taken to our home in Reno by an ambulance from Lovelock, my dear family, Paul, Vicky, Kelly, Mike, Mark, and Frank, who was in Reno at the time, gave me a lovely lounging chair to recuperate in. They made my homecoming memorable by cleaning the house and being there to receive me with their warming love. Mike and Mark had brought me roses for my homecoming, and a glowing fire was in the fireplace. I will never forget the kind gestures of my dear ones. Throughout my life, my family has treated me with tender love such as this. I was so happy and thankful to be alive and with my dear ones again. We still spent our summers in Montana. How exciting it was to open up our little house again, to let the sunshine in, to sit on the balcony, to look across the valley to the sunlit mountain peaks as birdsong lilted from the meadow below. After 3 winters in Reno, we bought a home in Logan, Utah, where we again have spent an enjoyable time, always going to Montana for the summer. MD became seriously ill in April 1976 with a stroke, September 8, 1976. Though sadness fills my whole being, deep in my heart, a persistent song of gladness, small though it may be, springs forth, for the sun is shining, and the beauty of the morning tells me there is happiness in the world yet, even though circumstances are not what we would have them. The autumn leaves are turning. I can yet smile and say that life is good, for there are 5 dear ones to help me along the way. On November 24, 1976, he passed away. On December 7, 1976, as I was sitting alone on the couch in the late afternoon, MD came back to see me. I couldn't see him, but he stood directly under the wide door opening between the living room and dinette. I felt his presence very forcibly. It was as if he had walked in to say hello. I shall never forget this happening. It has been a great comfort to me. "A man's perfection is his work," said Carlyle. In his work, he manifests himself in many ways. Work is the revelation on one's inner being. Was a fine builder, and was recognized as such by the church and by all who saw his work. The beautiful chapels he built will stand through the years as a monument to him. The first one in Linrose, Idaho, east of Preston, served as a schoolhouse as well as a chapel. At this time we were living on the farm, and any extra money was a godsend to us. Little did either of us dream that this small chapel was only the first of the many fine chapels MD was to build in his lifetime. He built one in Bozeman, Three Forks, Townsend, and Superior, all in Montana. He built one in Marshalltown, Iowa. He was called to Germany in June 1961 to build, but the program was not ready to start at that time, so he was called to England, where he built a chapel at Stockport near Manchester. This chapel was later pictured in the Deseret News Saturday edition as one of the most beautiful chapels to be built in the British Isles. Its Gothic design with its huge laminated beams and fine polished woodwork, and its great tower reaching into the sky, was a great attraction for the English people. The day its tower was put up was a special day for us all. Many people gathered to watch the huge crane lifted into place. The Mormons and their chapel were the talk of the day in the English newspapers. MD and his inexperienced missionaries had completed almost a miracle. People came from many miles to see this beautiful chapel. He built chapels in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Scottsdale, Arizona. As I look back across the years, poignant memories are mine. I visualize the hard, lean years on the farm in the country with our little ones, the Depression years, the days and days of drudgery when it seemed as if there would never be anything but hard work. But God in his goodness smiled upon our little family, granting blessing upon blessing. Our cup was full and runneth o'er. Bright moments of companionship and love far outshone the times of discouragement. Our days were filled with joy, striving, hoping, and praying. As each newborn babe was given into my arms, their tiny warm bodies against mine, from somewhere the goodness of life came flooding back into my heart. Life was sweet beyond all comprehension. Never were there sweeter youngsters than those 5 children. An unfailing strength and continual singing sprang from my heart as our little one flourished, and I knew that life was good. Springtime, summer, autumn, winter, sunset and sunrise in the valley, cradled I the arms of the eternal mountains, their moods and color ever changing. How dear the days, how fleeting the hours in that paradise of living, striving, loving, and hoping, where the stars were millions of flickering lanterns hung in a cameo of serenity, while little blonde heads touched each pillow, and 5 little cherubs dreamed of tomorrow.